Hello there, Internet version 2 here with Let's Read Danganronpa 0. When we last left off, I believe his name was Kamashiro? The Sex Pest 2.0 or 0.8 HD remix of 2 or whatever the fuck he's actually called. He agreed to work with Ryuko in terms of investigating the incident and finding out what the fuck was going on there. And then he was gross and awful, and I wish Danganronpa would stop doing that. And then she got all cuddly with Mitsuda. Mitsuda definitely seems to know something's going on. Well, I mean, it's obvious that things are going on, just the parade and everything. But he seems to know specifically something about Junko because he freaked out and bunked his head when Junko was mentioned. So he knows something. And not much else happened despite it being 15 minutes long. Anyhow, on to the next double chapter. I still don't know why sometimes it's double chapters. I guess it's just a translation thing and just, I'll condense the two down for some reason. Either or, we'll be continuing on now, if I can. It's right at the top. I was wondering where it started, but no, chapter 13, 14. Oh, right at the top, because I put it there deliberately. The courtyard at Hope's Peak Academy's eastern quarter, deep at night. The lights from the surrounding facilities were long gone. Only the street lamps, installed at fixed intervals, still dimly illuminated the darkness. In front of the clock tower on the edge of the courtyard stood a teenage girl, alone. She narrowed her eyes and looked at the clock above her head. "He should be here soon," she whispered. So it seems it isn't Ryuko, based on not being a first person. The girl was waiting for someone. When she first contacted the man, he coldly refused to meet her, insisting that it wasn't necessary. But once she'd procured documents concerning shady deals in his past, she found him much more open to suggestion. It wasn't hard, after all. She made her livelihood discovering people's secrets. In fact, she thought this one had given up a little too easily. What else was he hiding? Sounds like Kyoko. What else was he hiding? Fame is a fickle food. You work so hard to get it, and all it gets you is your freedom lost. The man she was waiting for was a member of Hope's Peak Academy's steering committee. Ooh. There was a reason she had to meet a member of the committee. There was something she had to ask directly, whatever the cost. There was a certain truth that the committee were earnestly trying to hide. A truth even her client, Hope's Peak Academy's headmaster, totally Kirigiri, most likely did not know. The only avenue of investigation was to question a committee member directly. She had come to that important realization only a few short days after setting out on her investigation. Her formidable talents led her to it. Her name was Kyoko Kirigiri! Woo! Yeah! I kind of didn't expect her to show up in this, but here she is. Fuck yeah. Maybe we'll actually see some interactions with her and her dad. Or maybe not. Oh, skip too far there. She was a student in Hope's Peak Academy's 78th class and bore the title of Super High School Level Detective. And right now, she was employed by Hope's Peak headmaster to investigate a certain incident. "He sure is late," she whispered, looking up at the clock tower once more. 5 minutes late. I should have asked him to be strictly on time. The wrinkles on her forehead deepened, but the moment she lowered her eyes from the clock, they disappeared. She saw a figure of a man in the distance. The figure glanced around, seemingly on guard, then proceeded slowly toward where she was standing. His features slowly became clearer. He was an elderly man, wearing a pitch-black suit and a matching pitch-black necktie, as if he was on the way from a funeral. His grizzled hair was unnaturally stiff with pomade, and seemed almost artificial. It was Ray Martin? Is that his name? Incredibly outdated, specifically Australian reference. Never mind. Fucking no one here would understand that. I barely do. As the man came closer, his face also revealed itself. His brow was covered with deep wrinkles that seemed to be chiseled directly into his skull. The sunken eyes below them glared at Kyoko with a disgusted expression. The distance between the two narrowed, and finally, when there were only 3 meters separating them, the man stopped. "Was it you who called me here?" The man opened his small, straight mouth and raised the question in a severe tone of voice. "Was it you who what?" But his words were cut short. Something absurd, something completely out of place, came falling down from the sky. And both the man and his words were flattened by it. Kyoko felt as if the scene before her was a stop-motion animation, as though she was witnessing a series of ridiculous tableaus. The school desk that came flying down from the sky hit the man directly on the head. The man's body twisted from the impact and then collapsed. The desk struck the ground and then bounced back into the air in recoil. At that point, another desk came flying down from above. It smashed into the fallen man's back, bending his body like a trampled ragdoll. Then, yet another falling desk twisted his neck unnaturally. The man's face showed no sign of surprise. It was stuck in the same expression he had when he talked to Kyoko. Then, several more flying desks hit his body. I'm assuming it's hit, not hid, making a huge cloud of dust as they hit the ground. An overdue intense crashing noise finally registered in Kyoko's ears. At the same time, a desk came shooting out from inside the cloud of dust, grazed her hair and landed behind her, revolving like a spinning top. Interesting. It was a freakish development, yeah, a development with no rhyme or reason. The man who moments ago stood in front of Kyoko had been crushed by a large number of falling school desks as soon as he opened his mouth. It all took place in the span of a few seconds. Mukuro/Junko/whoever has got everything planned pretty well. It took Kyoko only a brief moment to regain her senses. The dust cloud was still rising in the air when she took off, running up to the desk pile. There was already a deep red puddle next to the man, who was now buried under the rubble. Dark liquid seeped from his eyes, nose, and ears. Kyoko's mind quickly changed course. She turned her head to look above her. A vague silhouette stood atop the school building, slowly coming into focus. It was a human figure, illuminated by moonlight from behind. The figure brandished something above its head, and then threw it. It was a pipe chair, and it was flying straight towards Kyoko. She jumped aside, dodging the chair's trajectory, and leaped into the school building. Yet another crashing noise came from behind her. She assumed a low posture as she ran through the building's corridors, and then continued to run up the stairs without stopping to catch her breath. At that moment, she didn't care at all that she had just been targeted. She was running purely for the sake of the clue, and an adrenaline rush that erased any sense of danger from her mind. Yeah, it sounds like the Kyoko that we know and love. Also, wow, I mean, I expected the Syrian community to die, like, slowly, but just Junko, Mukuro, whoever, just realizing, oh shit, she's about to talk to the detective. Better kill them right the fuck now in a over-the-top method as all hell. Then, in no time at all, she reached a landing at the top floor and found the remains of a padlock lying on the floor in front of the door that led to the roof. The school should really consider buffing up security. She grabbed the doorknob, muttering cynically. She just grabbed it going, oh, that doesn't sound like her. The feeling of cold metal reached her fingertips, but she has the glove, whatever. She squeezed the knob and pushed. The door opened easily and noiselessly. She immediately felt the strong, cold night winds blowing past her body. Fuck. Why am I talking so bad today? I mean, I'm always bad, but usually not this bad. She took a single cautious step into the doorway and quickly looked around the roof, dimly illuminated by starlight. Can you give me the Sorry. There was no one there. She walked around the concrete floor, thoroughly checking the area near the door and every other place where a person could conceivably be hiding in the shadows. Nevertheless, she couldn't find anybody. I just missed them. A feeling of despondency assailed her, and she leaned back on the iron fence surrounding the roof. Then she looked up at the sky and quietly grumbled to herself. This is why I hate missing persons cases. Wow. This seems more cold than Kiriguri was even during Danganronpa 1. Although I guess part of the point of during her adventure during Danganronpa 1 is Makoto teaching her to open herself up a little bit, so... But it has more of a callousness here of just the whole idea of someone just died and she's making jokes. Well, not jokes, but just this is why I hate missing persons cases. That doesn't sound like Kyoko from the game. Like, Kyoko at the game wouldn't make jokes like that in some of these situations. Well, not just immediately afterwards. She might when she's about to... She sometimes is a bit of a smartass when she points out people. It's just like, oh, by the way, I totally know what you did, fuck you. But not immediately after the death. She gets right to the point and immediately starts investigating what the fuck happened, but normally not with things like this. She could see the wreckage of school desk and pipe chairs near the clock tower, but there was something missing. The body that should have been there wasn't. Kyoko's teeth chattered from the cold as she pulled her cell phone from an inner pocket. Just as she was about to push the call button, a hint of hesitation appeared on her face. Nevertheless, her fingers soon pushed the button. After a couple rings, she heard a man's voice. Are you free right now? Kyoko asked, skipping a greeting. There's something I want to report directly. I'm coming over. And Monokuma. So I'm guessing this is the divide with the chapter. For some reason they're still put together, but I don't know why it doesn't just say chapter whatever there and chapter whatever here, but okay. Pardon me. It was a few minutes after Kyoko Kirigiri had disappeared from the roof. A strange sound, as if the very air was being torn. Oh, I thought it was a phone thing. Was echoed through the East Quarter's courtyard. Zap, zap, taser gun! Exclaims the high school girl, touting a pistol-shaped object high over her head. Her eyes were focused on the two guards lying in a pile on the floor, collapsed. They were both lying face down, and each had a small, thin needle sticking out of their back. A wire ran from each needle to the pistol and the gun. Yeah, they're tasers, we get it. Take that! She cried and pulled the trigger. The bodies of the two men, who were already unconscious, shook and spasmed along with the violent noise. Ha ha! An ecstatic expression appeared on the girl's face as she watched them. Junko and Ashima. She had no makeup on, looked as if she had just woken up from sleep and kept whining big yawns. The pistol she held in her hand was a taser gun, a powerful self-defense weapon. It was a type of stun gun. By shooting some target with a needle connected to a wire, she could send an electric current through the target's body. It wasn't originally strong enough to kill a person, but since she modified it to send a stronger current, it wouldn't be so strange if someone did die. So no makeup on seems to imply that this is the actual Junko. To some extent, probably. Maybe. No one's around to see her, so who the fuck knows. But based on no makeup, I'm going to guess this is the actual Junko. A despair-inducing self-defense weapon. One might say it made her unbeatable. It's a fucking taser. There's beatable things to tasers. Like, I don't know, a gun. I mean, it's Japan, so a lot harder to get than some certain fucked hellscapes, but still. Junko and Ashima continued playing with the taser gun for a short while, but soon grew tired of it. She pulled the wires away with her bare hands and threw them into a plastic bag. Then she nonchalantly dumped the bag into a nearby trash can. Well then, I think that took care of every annoying person in my way. It seems that little Miss Kindaichi also disappeared to who knows where. Poo. Does that mean I have the place all to myself? Who's Miss Kindaichi? Just the teacher? Have we heard that name before? It doesn't sound familiar. She let out a theatrical sigh of relief and walked majestically across the plaza. Her destination was the clock tower. Oh, okay, so this is how she got there. Okay. She didn't attempt to hide herself at all. Quite the opposite. She exhibited a sense of presence that seemed to scream at people to look at her. It also had the sinister suggestion that by doing so, they might end up dead. That said, I never expected little Miss Conan to stick her nose into my business. It must be that pesky headmaster's meddling. But my plans for this scenario don't include her at all. So what am I to do? I mean, it is interesting to have her around, but it's also possible she'll be a real hindrance after I went through all the effort to... Hey, wait, is this afterwards? Is little Miss Conan Kyoko? Conan some type of detective? I don't know. She stopped abruptly, as if about to trip forward, and stared at the wreckage of school desks and pipe chairs in front of her. The moment she saw it, the cruel smile that was plastered on her face disappeared. The body isn't here, she spat out. Again? This sure is despair-inducing. As despair-inducing as all your dreams crumbling down. She's not the one who's removing the bodies? Interesting. Nevertheless, there was a smile on her face. Smiling, she kicked the pipe chair that was lying on the ground near her feet. It didn't even seem like a very powerful kick, but the chair flew a few meters, hit a street lamp that was in its way, and shot off into the air like a ping-pong ball. Then, when the sound of the clash's echoes disappeared from the plaza, Junko Enoshima's figure was already gone, vanished like a shadow. Chapter 15. Okay, so yeah, that chapter would be really short, but still, combining two chapters in half doesn't seem to, whatever. Chapter 15. What was that noise? Kyoko Kurigiri instinctively stopped moving. She thought she heard a loud sound like a bell clanging, but when she listened attentively to the corridor But when she listened attentively, the corridor was as silent and still as ever. Did I imagine it? Usually, she would have stopped and investigated until she could tell for sure, but right now she had something far more important to do, and so she took off quickly towards her destination. As Kyoko's running up to do that, Junko's running back down with a taser, shooting people and doing all that, and messing with Kyoko by kicking shit around. Okay. Kyoko walked briskly down a corridor of Hope's Peak Academy's staff building, a place students are normally forbidden to enter. The sound of her footsteps echoed coldly through the dim corridor. There was no sign of people in the staff building this late at night. She hadn't passed anyone on the way here, and she most likely wouldn't pass anyone going forward. She reached her destination in no time at all. A plaque reading, Headmaster's Office, adorned the door in front of her eyes. Kyoko glared at it for a moment, and then pushed the door without knocking. You're already here. That was fast, said Jin Kirigiri, who was sitting atop a desk deep inside the office. He was smiling. Kyoko surveyed the room quickly, as was her habit when entering an unfamiliar place. Her first and only impression was, it's dirty. Cardboard boxes and documents were piled everywhere without rhyme or reason. I've been too busy since we moved here, so I haven't had time to put things in order, said Kirigiri, having noticed where Kyoko was looking. Nevertheless, Kyoko's reply was surly and indifferent. She moved straight onto the subject at hand, indicating no interest in small talk. I guess also her standoffishness could come from the fact that she's dealing with her dad right now, and she's not a big fan of him. I mean, she was still mourning when she found out that he was dead during the first game, but she did say it's just like, we didn't have a super close relationship and there wasn't that much really there. Although she did also forget the entire time that they spent together after she started attending the academy. And also recently moved. How long has Kirigiri been headmaster here? I just came from meeting a member of the steering committee, but someone got in our way. Kirigiri was about to say in front of someone. Kirigiri was about to say something in surprise, but Kyoko quickly continued as if the, Fuck me, let me start that sentence again. Kirigiri was about to say something in surprise, but Kyoko quickly continued as if to say it was not yet time for such a reaction. Okay, so this is the confusing part because he's being referred to as Kirigiri and she's being referred to as Kyoko. That's going to make things confusing here. Okay, whatever. He was killed in front of my eyes. Killed? But his body disappeared soon after that. Disappeared? Despite only managing to repeat her words, Kirigiri's face grew deeply concerned. Nevertheless, Kyoko didn't seem to take notice, and continued speaking in the same indifferent tone. But don't you think that's strange? They killed him as if trying to show off in front of me, and then they took the body away, like they wanted to hide it. If they wanted to show off, what purpose does hiding the body serve? I have a bad feeling about this. Kyoko seemed to be getting more and more passionate as she went on, and spoke faster and faster. Furthermore, didn't another committee member go missing yesterday? He may also be in danger. We should find a way to contact and warn him. No, not just him. The whole committee is also— Wait a moment! Kirigiri couldn't take it anymore, and rose up for a chair. Are you sure he was dead? Kyoko said nothing, but her grim face was all the answer he needed. Kirigiri felt an intense feeling of exhaustion taking over his body and sank back into his chair. Why would such a thing? He heard Kyoko letting out a long, slow sigh in response to his question. I'm not sure about the hiding, but I have a guess as to why he was killed. You do? Kirigiri slapped his hands on his desk and looked energized again. Tell me, why? Watching him, Kyoko felt a sense of disappointment washing over her. Her emotion was reflected in his eyes, which seemed to be asking why he couldn't even figure that out on his own. Worse, he didn't even notice that. Please, tell me. Kyoko sighed another deep sigh and answered quietly. Make that bigger show when killing someone can only mean it's a warning, and if that's the case, killing a member of the steering committee is surely in response to that incident. Jin Kirigiri gulped loudly. So you know about that already? About the worst, largest incident in Hope's Peak Academy's history? To a certain extent. Contrasting Kyoko's calm answer, Kirigiri's face turned sour. I see. He spat out and slowly leans back into his chair. Then, after blinking several times in an attempt to regain his composure, he asked her another question. Are you saying he was killed because we are covering up the existence of that incident? No, there's more to it than that. Kyoko shook her head lightly. The steering committee hasn't just been covering up the existence of the incident, they've been hiding something else. Something important. I think that's why he was killed. Kirigiri's expression turned thoughtful in an instant. Then he whispered quietly. Perhaps. Is it because the committee knows the identity of the culprit and are harboring them? Kyoko's eyes raised slightly in reaction. You know about that? For the first time since she entered the room, her eyes met Kirigiri's. Wow. I never thought you would know about the culprit conspiracy. I didn't think you'd give me this job if you did. But I guess you're in on it after all. Her words carried a hint of anger. No, that's not it. Kirigiri shook his head, flustered. I was never told about the culprit or the plan to harbor them. The committee decided that all on their own. I didn't hear about it from them. I did my own little investigation. Kyoko's frown grew deeper. You did your own investigation. That's not that strange, is it? Kirigiri smiled a bitter smile. I can manage that much when my mind's on it. I mean, I do have the blood of a detective family running through my— Enough! Kyoko's voice suddenly rose. Kirigiri raised his head in surprise and found her glaring at him. She wasn't even trying to hide the anger boiling up inside her, as it was reflected in her eyes. She wasn't angry at her employer or her headmaster. She was angry at her detested father. Don't even dare joking about that. And that's why I'm sorry. He had no choice but to apologize. That was thoughtless of me. He bowed his head deeply. His circumstances didn't matter. His own feelings didn't matter. From her point of view, he was simply a man who abandoned his family. That much was unquestionable. He didn't want to make any excuses. It's not like he could anyway. But perhaps, someday, he could at least convey his own feelings to her. No, those are just selfish thoughts. Hey! And she's in a different outfit compared to in the game. She doesn't have her jacket on. She's got the rest of it. That is the rest of her outfit, but she doesn't have her jacket on. And also, this is just me totally noticing this because, hey, and also makes my cosplay more accurate. Her thighs seem way thicker here compared to the rest of her body than in the actual game. But hey, that just means that my cosplay of her is even more accurate because I have gigantic fucking thighs. I mean, my boobs aren't as big as hers, even though she doesn't have that very big boobs. But my stomach is gigantic. But you know what? If I lose weight, I'll do the cosplay again and it'll be more accurate. Forget it. He raised his head at her voice. He raised his head at her voice. She was leaning on a bookshelf in the corner of the room, and her expression was back to its calm self. We've gotten off topic. Her voice was cool and composed. I'm sorry, you're right. He let out a deep sigh, but just as he was about to let his attention relax, 2 words assaulted him, as if in surprise attacks. They were cold, sharp words that seemed to pierce the air. It was Izuru Kamakura, wasn't it? Kirigiri reacted instinctively, his eyes, his fingertips, his mouth. Kyoko did not miss his reaction. So it was. His entire body was arrested by the look she gave him. He remembered that look. No, he couldn't just remember it. She had the eyes of a detective family. The eyes he hated and feared. The eyes that could pierce anyone's inner thoughts, creep through their minds and leave nothing unsealed. Or unrevealed. There's still dirt on my screen because it is filthy, because it's hard to clean it because the laptop and shit. His own daughter giving him this awe-inspiring look. Kirigiri's frown loosened. Just a little. As expected from an heir to the Kirigiri family. Such outstanding talent. Is something funny? Kyoko asked, watching his face, as if taking him to task. No, I was just admiring you. The smile hadn't left Kirigiri's face. I instructed you to find Izuru Kamakura, and in such a short time you have not only discovered the existence of the worst, largest incident in Hope's Peak Academy's history, but also guessed correctly that Izuru Kamakura was responsible for it. That is amazing. He spoke fast, in excitement. See, they do the thing at the end where they tell you how it was meant to be conveyed, and then I convey it completely wrong. Well then, how about you tell me the rest? Who is Izuru Kamakura? I can't even tell if it's a man or a woman by that name alone. Kirigiri shook his head. I told you before, I can't tell you that. The smile disappeared from his face. I see. Fine then. Kyoko was quickly getting ready to leave, as if to say she'd find her out herself regardless. She looked at her feet and continued in disinterest tone. But I don't understand this at all. Why would you ask me to find Kamakura for you if you know he's the culprit? Aren't you trying to cover up this incident? If so, you should just let the committee shelter Kamakura and do nothing. No, I can't just leave it up to them. Oh? Kyoko's mouth twisted unnaturally. So you don't trust them either? No, that's not it. Kyoko's voice turned cold. It's just that I don't think they know what they're doing. I think they're making a big mistake. A mistake? They think that if they can cover up this incident, it's all over. But I don't think that's true. Kyoko listened carefully to Kirigiri's explanation without interjecting. That incident is not yet over. I feel like something is still going on somewhere out there. I hope it's just my imagination, but if it isn't, this may turn into something we can't undo. That's why I must hear what Izuru Kamakura has to say, but the committee isn't revealing where Kamakura is. They don't trust me. Something bothered Kyoko. It had less to do with what he was saying and more with his demeanor as he was telling her about his fear that the incident was far from over. His tone of voice and gestures were certainly grave, but that was not all. She felt just a tiny hint of different emotion hidden in them. She suddenly remembered her grandfather. Kyoko's grandfather, Jin Kirigiri's father, was still the head of the Kirigiri family, on active duty as a detective. She remembered her first accomplishment as a detective. She was officially acting as an assistant on the case, but was successful beyond anyone's imagination. Her grandfather, being her guardian at the time, had been observing her closely. She remembered him narrowing his eyes without saying a word, the expression on his face going far beyond simple joy or excitement. She thought her father's expression now resembled her grandfather's expression then, but she didn't dare say a word. It would be an insult to her grandfather, who she revered. Is something wrong? The question made her realize she'd been quiet for a while. It's nothing. Kyoko pulled herself together, softly brushing away a strand of hair. Fine. I understand why you asked me to search for the Kamakura now. In short, you couldn't do it yourself without drawing the committee's attention. Then, she pointed her piercing eyes towards Kirigiri again. But, are you sure it was a good idea to confide in me? Kirigiri's expression turned worried. What do you mean? I told you from the very beginning, didn't I? The steering committee is being targeted because they're sheltering the incident's culprit. Which means, the culprit is someone who is searching for Kamakura. Kirigiri suddenly realized what he was saying, and a stiff smile appeared on his face. In that case, what you're trying to say is that I am a suspect. That's right, although I already know it's not you. Kyoko folded her arms in front of her chest. Right after the body disappeared, I made a phone call to this room. You answered straight away, so unfortunately, you have an alibi. Unfortunately? That's a bit much, isn't it? Kirigiri's stiff smile turned into a bitter one. Furthermore, don't you think you have other reasons to worry? When I find Izuru Kamakura, what if I decide to call the police before coming to you? No, I'm not worried about that at all, Kirigiri answered, as if mocking the suggestion. Much as the law is important to the police, the most important thing to a detective is the client. As long as you are a super high school level detective, you will not break our deal. Even if you really detest your employer, he thought to himself. It doesn't sound like the Kyoko we know. Kyoko we know sounds more like justice seeking more than anything. Is that why you hired me? You thought it would be bad if I came sniffing about the incident on my own, so you thought you'd keep me quiet by giving me a job? Her words were tinted with emotion. Kyoko herself felt that. She immediately regretted saying them. If that's what my words implied, I apologize. The only reason I hired you is because I needed your talent. I had no ulterior motives. He chose his words carefully. It was clear that he was worried, and that made Kyoko even angrier. She was also mad at herself for letting him get to her. She thought she had put it all behind her. She wasn't supposed to feel anything for her father anymore. She wasn't even supposed to resent him. That's why she accepted the job. It was supposed to be just like any other case. So why was she choosing such sharp words every time she spoke? It was like, I'm like a spoiled child looking for attention. Kyoko, you can be a little bit, you don't have to be so hard on yourself. I've had enough of this idle chatter, she said in a strained voice, trying to rid the thought from her head. In any case, we can't have any more victims. I think it's a good idea for you to warn the rest of the committee members. Tell them if they continue to harbor Izuru Kamakura, it's likely more people are going to end up dead. Yes, of course. They both knew the committee were unlikely to listen, but neither of them said it out loud. They both knew it would be useless to mention it. I'll be going now. Kyoko turned her back on Kirigiri without giving him another look. She was on her way to the door when an unexpected voice came from behind her back. This job turned out much more dangerous than I imagined. Kyoko stopped in her tracks. So? She turned her head back. I am a detective, heir to the Kirigiri family. I thought that's what you'd say. Kyoko sensed those words were leading to another unwanted emotion, and started moving quickly to the door again. Then when she reached for the doorknob, her father spoke again behind her. The preparatory school's parade is growing more radical by the day. His voice was unusually tense. I feel the timing is too perfect. It can't be unrelated to that incident. What I'm trying to say is... Kirigiri cleared his throat and changed to a natural tone of voice. Be careful. He sounded like a father talking to his daughter before she went out for the evening. Nevertheless, Kyoko's reaction was a blunt one. That is to say, she didn't react at all. She just kept silent as she left the headmaster's office. After hearing the door close loudly, Kirigiri let out a deep sigh and leaned back into his chair, but his face showed a hint of a smile. That truly is one incredible talent she has. He whispered those words inside his heart, and then the smile on his face grew wider. After leaving the headmaster's office, Kyoko walked back through the corridors as fast as when she arrived. Her face was emotionless. Then, without changing her expression, she suddenly whispered, He didn't have to say that. I know already. The whisper only she herself could hear soon vanished into the air, and then she vanished too. She herself vanished too, deep into the dark corridors. Hey! Kyoko time! Woo! We get Kyoko! I mean, it makes sense if investigating stuff's going to be happening, but hey, we get Kyoko! And we actually get to see some of her interactions with her father! A guy who just abandoned the family, then came back and is just like, hey, daughter, sup? And she's just like, fuck you, dickhead. Hey. Well, that was a full 3 chapters. Well, 3? 4? I forgot the numbers. A full however many chapters fully dedicated to Kyoko. And I'm happy. Well, I guess part of it was technically about Junko going zap, 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 bang, 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 pew, 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 wah. So that's not quite exactly about Kyoko. But hey, Kyoko's here, investigating, doing her stuff. So this is what I mean, but like, this is what I... Now this makes Kamashiro's appearance even more confusing. I mean, I get that Kyoko's not going to be the one investigating for Ryuko. I get that. But you've got perfect detective doing perfect detecting stuff and just going, I know about the incident, I know about Azuru, I know Azuru did it. I know the steering committee are hiding Azuru. Where Kamashiro going up is just like, I know there's something going on. I'll have sex with you, let me find it. Or if you let me have sex with you, I'll find it. And it's just like, why the fuck does he even need to be in the story? We've got the better person for the job here as well. It just makes that last video even more confusing as why Kamashiro took up so much time with it, when we've got the actual person whose actual talent is finding out shit and not just being undetectable in a room on the case, who's already found out way the fuck more. Either way, on the next episode, it seems that based on reading there, we're going back to Ryoko Otonashi's perspective on things. So we'll get a lot more clumsiness and everything like that. So, hey! Until then, this is version 2, signing out.